Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, August 2, 2025. Time in Texas, about 9 a.m. I have a subscribe button in the lower right corner of my screen. Thanks for like, subscribe, and share, and for hitting the like button. That helps my channel to grow. Some of the sources I'll use today: God in the Bible, Patriot subscribers, Borzikman, Steve Quayle's aggregate site, InfoWars, Hal Turner, Best and Taylor, Western Journal Plus. Some of the things we'll cover: President Trump moves nukes. Ghislaine Maxwell is in Texas. And bye-bye, Muppets. And the MI6 equal Russian POWs. So let's get started. So we have from Ben Davidson, his current site on YouTube is Space Weather, formerly Suspicious Observers, says that despite the claims by Avi Loeb, Harvard astrophysicist, and others who say that an interstellar object in space could be an ET ship, Ben sticks with NASA, who maintains it's a comet. And we have this. So we have from Best and Taylor, Mount St. Helens, according to the USGS, also has magma rising on the other side of Mount St. Helens. So now recently I brought out that we had magma tunnels between Mount Rainier that continues with thousands of tremors. I believe it was Mount Hood, Mount St. Helens. These are all connected by magma tunnels, and we recently had, so we have Alaska, Aleutian Islands, we've got Kamchatka, this is Russia, Peninsula. We had recently an 8.8. In this area, we had a 7.3. This has been within the past couple of weeks. And it's believed the magma in these three significant mountains is bubbling. So this is coming out. Mount St. Helens also has magma rising. So Mount St. Helens erupted about in the early 80s. Say it was on this side. Well, now they're finding the magma is rising on the other side. And this is consistent with a Native American seer called Red Elk, that the other side of Mount St. Helens would see activity. So we see that going on. And we have this. So we have from Western Journal. So we have, I'm a dropsy today. I used to work with a guy who said some days he had dropsies, and he would know when he got up in the morning if it was going to be one of those days, because he would begin by dropping the soap in the shower. So this seems to be one of my dropsy days. So we have this going on with President Trump. So we know in the U.S. in 2020, we had a coup where the votes were flipped from President Trump to JB. So now we have more information coming out about that. So Kash Patel, he's the President Trump's director of the FBI, has found thousands of documents relating to both the 2020 coup plus Epstein at the FBI, hidden in secret rooms and placed in burn bags. Apparently, intel organizations have special burn bags. They put documents in there, and then, you know, I guess maybe they put an accelerant and light it on fire and then zip it up, and it keeps the fire from spreading, but it's a burn bag. So thousands of documents, additional documents have been found. We also have information about a special report put out by Durham. I believe that was in President Trump's, that might have been under JB. And plus we have inside the government that HRC plus the Dem Party was receiving help from inside intel organizations in 2016, also to flip the vote in the first President Trump's first term, but they were unable to do so, but were able to successfully do so in 2020. So that's going on. So these secrets are all coming out. You know, the Bible says nothing hidden will be kept hidden. We have this from InfoWars, from Steve Quayle's Aggregate site. President Trump's Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is to release additional declassified documents demonstrating, she's on a tour now, going around speaking and showing these declassed documents, proving that various intel organizations in the U.S., CIA, FBI, NSA, plus, participated in the 2020 coup, and they knew and had documentation about the voting machines flipping the vote, but kept secret. And the CIA continues its Mockingbird operation. So we have more on that. So we have that the CIA continues control of the U.S. mainstream media, and that would be all major newspapers, magazines, radio, TV, with the three or four main channels, CBS, NBC, and so on. The CIA basically funds these money-making operations. They fund them so they can control them and put out propaganda. And the CIA began their propaganda mainstream media program to propagandize American citizens in the 1970s. Virtually nothing you've heard then on TV, major radio stations, other outlets since the 1970s has been the truth. Don't you remember all the info about 9/11? So that's going on, and the CIA continues it. And the CIA also infiltrated major political organizations, churches, schools, and that's another reason President Trump wants to get rid of the education department, because going out to our schools is CIA propaganda. So that's going on. Yeah. So we see God working to clean up America. And we have this. President Trump and the Congress has voted to rescind money, and this is going to a large public corporation. So the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which includes PBS, They televise the Muppets, and NPR. They have definitely a left-leaning morning edition segment. So the Muppets are one of the biggest money-making operations globally. Why is the U.S. government funding this organization $1.1 billion? It was done so the CIA could control also the so-called alternative broadcasting, public broadcasting. Well, now that funding is going away. And we say, wait to go. It's been in place, $1.1 billion per year for the last 50 years. It will also affect NPR, that does morning news, and PBS, that does the Muppets. Now, for NPR and PBS, this will represent 25% of their budget. For the Corporation of Public Broadcasting, they're closing down August 1. So we'll see less money going to NPR and PBS, and perhaps less control by the CIA. So I put in as one of my headlines, bye-bye Muppets, but more than likely, we understand PBS and NPR are now asking for public donations, and they are receiving millions of dollars. But that's not going to be enough to cover 25% of their expenses. So I really don't expect the Muppets to go away, but I would expect less support for the extreme left-leaning left propaganda on public airways. So that's going on. Way to go, President Trump. Clean up mainstream media. And we have this. Okay, so we have some things going on in the world with regard to war. And the American people do not support sending the sons and daughters of American mothers and fathers to any war. The American people do not support war. And we believe that President Trump should stop sending money and weapons to Ukraine also. Now we have this. So we have Russia, and we have Belarus, Ukraine. Now, recently, Nicaragua, in front of the UN, said it recognizes Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhzhia, and Kherson as being part of Russia. These four areas formerly of Ukraine, and well, Ukraine up to about, I don't know, 50 or 60 years ago or so was part of Russia. So, but these four areas inside Ukraine, the current Ukraine, voted in 2023 to rejoin Russia. Now, in 2014, the CIA and the U.S. State Department, led by Victoria Nuland, put in place a coup and overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine, put in place their own puppets, and began a killing of the Slavic genetic group. And that would be people in Ukraine, both those who spoke Russian and those who spoke Ukraine. The way that the Ukraine government now is trying to kill its own people is by sending them to the front lines, including 60-plus-year-old males. That I'm not sure if they're sending the elderly females also. But that's going on. So Nicaragua, in front of the UN, recently said, we recognize these areas as being part of Russia. So we had President Trump sending to so we have Russia, we have the Arctic up here, Arctic. We have the Black Sea and the Caspian and so on. So we have Russia. Down here we would have China. This is Mongolia. Okay. President Trump in the past 24 hours has moved 2 nuclear subs carrying approximately 200 nuclear weapons. He didn't say where they were repositioned. Possibly they could be in the Arctic. That's possible. Possibly somewhere in the Black Sea or somewhere off of, so we have China. Okay, we would have Russia, China, India. We also have in this area Diego Garcia Island. So President Trump somewhere has placed 2 U.S. nuclear subs within striking distance of Russia. So that's going on. So we have this. Also coming out about the Durham report, the coup in 2020, information by Hal Turner that Russiagate was definitely made up, and that involved the CIA, MI6, and Mossad. And the CIA knew about it but kept silent. And the Durham report about 2016, the FBI investigated President Trump and knew that Russia was not influential in his campaign. So that's going on. Another source for that. And we have this. So let's see. I've got some information. See, dropsies today. All right. So I've got some more information about what's going on in the war situation. So we have this. Yeah, President Trump is, trying to manage some aspects of the war effort through tariffs. And so that's going on. Now, we have this. So we have also, so in the past 24 hours, President Trump has moved 2 nuclear subs somewhere in striking distance of Russia. China now is massing troops along its border right across the water from Taiwan. And we have this breaking news that Russia has captured MI6 and British military officers, and they were in Nikolaev. Right here. They were captured like last night. And Russia captured MI6 officers and also officers of the British military. And for the MI6, Russia has captured Colonel Edward Blake. He heads up the MI6 Psychological Operation Unit. And of the British military, Russia has captured Colonel Richard Carroll. Now, London is putting forth that these military and intel operatives are tourists. Yeah, they were just down here, way off the coast of the Black Sea in the interior of Ukraine. But what they were doing, they're like historians, and they were gathering information about World War II naval operations in the Black Sea. You believe us, don't you? And now London is demanding that Russia return them. They were just tourists, and they were just gathering information about World War II, even though they were way in the interior of Ukraine. And Russia found with them maps of Russian strategic military locations inside Russia. Also plans that Russia has for its deployment of troops inside Russia, and secret plans that both the MI6 and the British military would use to assist Ukrainian drone operators to hit military targets deep inside Russia. So if you're not buying London's story that these military and intel operatives are tourists, well then, you would be in the category of people who can see truth. Now, it's also believed that Russia is going to hold these individuals in their captive state to be used as bargaining chips in upcoming peace negotiations with the U.S. So that's going on. And we have this also coming out. Yeah, so we finished that segment. Okay, we have this. Okay, Carrie Luntz Financial recently interviewed Martin Armstrong, globally famous economist, with his predictive software Socrates, talking about we've heard that NATO is going to put out a military group of NATO. 250,000 supposedly by August 6 to 7. The question is, President Trump has already said U.S. military are not going inside Ukraine. It's believed this 250,000 was to try and take this enclave area of Russia, Kaliningrad, August 6 to 7, 250,000 military. Kaliningrad is located between Lithuania and Poland. So the question to Martin Armstrong was, where are they going to get 250,000 troops? I would wonder. We do know we have U.S. military, Poland, Romania, plus. And I believe we have between 50 to 100,000. Now, President Trump has made the public statement that no U.S. military are going into Ukraine. But he has not made a public statement that U.S. military would not go into, excuse me, an area of Russia, and that would be Kaliningrad. So I believe President Trump needs to come out and clarify this. August 6 and 7's, in a few days? So, yeah, that's going on. So the question to Martin Armstrong is, where is NATO going to get a military of 250,000? So currently, I'm put forth my thinking on it. It's not been clarified. But we do have this, that Europe is broke and Europe wants war, and it's highly likely that NATO would also engage with Europe in putting forth a false flag to try and falsely bring in an Article 5 of NATO, an Article 5. One nation hits a NATO nation, then all the NATO nations group together and respond. Article 5. But Kaliningrad would not be a hit on a NATO nation, neither Moldova nor several other nations. So that's going on. But Socrates, the predictive software used by Martin Armstrong, says that governments are trying to take their people down. I believe that. The governments are trying to mislead people and engage in mockingbird propaganda. And we have this President Vučić of Serbia, who is more aligned with Russia than NATO would like, possibly has tried to put in place a coup or an attempted assassination. And there was an emergency meeting at midnight inside Serbia in Belgrade. That happened last night. And it's being put forth that NATO is trying to bring about a coup inside Serbia to replace Vučić, who is not in line with NATO and Europe objectives of war, war, war. And we have this. So I have from a Facebook friend, RFK Jr., President Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services, has fired 2 of his deputies who behind his back approved a COVID pharma for the arm. So he has fired Heather McElrath and also Hannah Anderson. So way to go, RFK, because, you know, the American people were saying, hey, what's going on with HHS approving these pharma for the arm? And now we know it was done behind his back. So I believe he's fired those 2 individuals. I believe he would have the ability to now rescind that approval to Moderna. So that's going on. And we have this. Yeah. So it's been documented now. We had the longest lightning strike documented so far that happened in 2017. And it extended, I believe, from Texas to Kansas. It was 829 kilometers long, or 515 miles. Now, this is in 2017. We know that many meteorologists, geologists, and so on, and government intel informants have put forth a fairly solid group of facts to support that we have something impacting our solar system, impacting the sun, impacting Earth, and that we would see changes in our weather patterns. We would see larger and more frequent earthquakes, larger and more frequent volcanoes, and also flood events, and also a change in lightning. So this is coming forth that by Science News, and I believe this report was recently published. And one of the people doing the study, Michael Peterson, physicist from Georgia Tech, and it was published July 31 in American Science Society. So that's going on. And the purpose of lightning is to recharge the earth, particularly the ground, to produce nitrates inside the ground that are required by plants to grow. So lightning is good for the earth. We have this from Governor Greg Abbott in Texas, that money is available. We know we had that catastrophic, very tragic flash flood event in Central Texas, really affecting Kerrville, where I believe the final death toll for 6 counties was 146, with 109 losing their lives in Kerrville. That's where a children's summer camp, Christian summer camp, was impacted. And many of them were children between the ages of 8 to 14. So that area has been impacted, and many people have been out of work. So there is a way that people who are out of work due to a disaster, including people who are self-employed, they can get money. One of the requirements is the president has to declare the area a disaster area under federal law, which President Trump did. So individuals in these Central Texas area, if you are out of work, including self-employed, you can get money. And you make an application to FEMA. FEMA handles the money. And I didn't know there was such a thing as disaster unemployment. But yeah, it's through the federal government. And we have this, that, yeah, we have from a dark room that the U.S. military has the Epstein, New Mexico flight logs, and that many of his flights were covered under government contracts, secret flights, via the CIA, and to secretly move people around. But the U.S. military has all these documents, including the flight logs. So that's going on. And we have this from Dabu 77. St. Paul, Minnesota. The National Guard and FBI are assisting in St. Paul, Minnesota, to recover stolen items. And I believe they had some type of shooting there also. We have this from Judge Napolitano, who recently interviewed Max Blumenthal, saying that Epstein was part of Mossad, that's the intel organization of Israel, and that Israel now has a new plan to ethnically cleanse Palestine. So we know that's going on. And now we have this. Okay, so Ghislaine Maxwell. So we have this about Epstein. So we have in Texas, Bryan, Texas, It's right next to, excuse me, College Station, Texas, where Texas A&M is located. There is a federal women's low security prison in Bryan, Texas. Ghislaine Maxwell, we know the sidekick of Epstein, Maxwell. Her father, Robert Maxwell, had been an operative for Mossad, and it's believed Ghislaine Maxwell was also an operative for Mossad, as was Jeffrey Epstein, and that they operated a honeypot operation, Epstein Island, his ranch in New Mexico, his palace in New York City. He has a mansion there. And now it's believed that Epstein and Maxwell both worked for primarily Mossad, but also CIA and MI6. Now, I mean, it's being put forth that Jeffrey Epstein was suicided. Most Americans don't believe that. But Ghislaine Maxwell, a few years ago, was convicted of grooming and soliciting and obtaining underage girls for the Epstein honeypot operation, and she was sentenced to 20 years. Now, she is singing like a bird to the DOJ and Congress, and some information is coming out that President Trump, you know, if she tells all, she's 63 years old now, may give her a pardon. So we'll see, or commute her sentence. But for sure, she has been moved this week from a federal low-security women's prison in Florida, and she's been moved to the same situation in Bryan, Texas. That happened, in the last 24 to 36 hours. So we see something's going on, and we have that new information coming out that the U.S. military does have the Epstein flight logs. Now, from Prometheus update, we have, excuse me, that the federal government does have a list of Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's list, including Clinton suicides. So that's going on. And Ghislaine is singing to the DOJ and Congress. And we, the people, we say, bring it. And Ghislaine was moved from Florida to Texas for reasons that are not being put forth. I would suspect it might be a security issue. So we see more truth. We see DNI, Tulsi Gabbard, coming out, talking about the CIA's Mockingbird program, where the CIA, excuse me, has been controlling mainstream media and putting forth absolute propaganda. We see Congress not giving money to prop up much of the mainstream media through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. We see more information coming out about aspects of Epstein and Maxwell. So that's going on. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you, and I'll see you soon.